Um, I thank the organizers of this conference for the invitation to speak on a topic which has kept me engaged for nearly 40 years now. The topic shown here was given to me as a part of the agenda for this particular panel discussion. I have some specific opinion in the matter and some specific ideological or position or perspective from which I have worked. A huge number of children in this country, at least 30 to 40%, suffer because of this mismatch between home and school language. There is an invisible language barrier when children enter school. But let us not ask if the child is ready for school. I think the question, is the school child ready, is more pertinent. Is the school ready for the child? That I think is important, because if the schools are not ready for some children because they cannot teach them in a language in which they have learned and will learn, and then we say that these children are dropouts, that is unfair. They have been pushed out. If I impose a lecture on you here in my language, not yours, if I speak in Odia and most of you leave, sleep, or do not participate, are you dropouts or push-outs? Choice is yours. I have always used the term push-out. Then this idea of transition from mother tongue to school language, meaning the transition from a dominated to a dominant language, is misplaced. It is as if mother tongues are not important in their own right. They are good only for helping a smooth transition from home to school language. The message is loud and clear. What matters is the school language, and mother tongue or home language is only a ladder, a tool to make the important transition to school language. Such a view perpetuates the dominance hierarchy of languages in any society, which is unacceptable. All languages are equal. None is more equal than the other. Children's identities are invested in their home language, their mother tongue, which cannot be viewed as subjugated to other languages. In the rest of this presentation, I will try to show why mother tongue or home language, I am using the term interchangeably, although one can debate about the use of one or the other term. I will try to show why mother tongue is vital for many languages to be learned in a multilingual country like ours or the world at large. We all know what happens if the language of the school is not ready for the child's home language. Just some reminders. The dominant school language user, the teacher, talks down to the one who do not know. The hierarchy is something that the minister referred to in the earlier session. When children confront the language barrier, they do not participate and they sleep. What else? The disinterest and non-comprehension is writ large in the eyes of this Saura child in an Odia medium school. I do not have to tell you what happens with the mismatch between the home and the school language. School failure, push out, loss of identity, and all the fallouts of that. Is mother tongue unnecessary? Is it dispensable? We need to understand the basic psycholinguistic principles of the role and the relationship of languages. First of all, what do languages do for the child, for all of us? They do much more than only communicating. They are the tools for our basic conceptual cognitive machinery. They regulate our thinking, planning, and problem solving. They enable us to think about our thinking and our languaging. They constitute the core of our identity and much more. Are languages in our mind independent of each other? Are our proficiency in multiple languages common across languages, or are they separate? Research on the cognitive basis of language proficiency show clearly that the idea of separate underlying language proficiency competing with each other is wrong. The separate underlying proficiency idea mistakenly assumes what parents sending their children to English medium schools believe. Languages are like separate balloons in human mind, so that if you inflate one balloon, giving it more space, there is less space for other languages. In other words, if mother tongue is taught early, it will leave less space for English, which really matters for our parents. It will be difficult, therefore, to learn English. That is the wrong assumption that parents often make. Research and psycholinguistics of language proficiency is emphatic and clear. There is a common underlying proficiency for languages. What we know in one language is available to the other languages also. Most of us here read newspapers in at least 2 languages. After a couple of weeks, think about a news and ask yourself, in which language did you read the news? It doesn't matter really, because the information travels across languages in our central processing system. Underlying knowledge is common across all languages. It is like a huge piece of iceberg on the ocean. Above the water, there are different tips, but underneath the water, they all constitute one piece. We have a common underlying proficiency for all our languages with separate input or output switches for each. Interdependence of our languages also mean that if mother tongue or the home language is promoted and developed, this will also easily transfer to other tongues or other languages. Early education in mother tongue comes at no cost to development of other languages and education in other languages, including English. Linguistic interdependence also means that the proficiency that a child will develop in a second language, such as English, depends on the level of mother tongue competence. If the home language or mother tongue is developed well, it enables and facilitates development of second or third languages. There are linguistic transfer of knowledge across languages and also transfer of all learning. If the first language or mother tongue is not developed sufficiently and the child is pushed to a second language, for example, English, there is negative transfer and a subtractive effect. The more a child learns English early, the less she retains of the mother tongue, like Hindi, for example. These are all research-based findings. I'm just trying to sum up the main findings for you. High levels of multilingual proficiency develop only when the mother tongue or the first language is developed to a high level of competence, and it supports the second or the third language for high levels of multilingual proficiency. The question is, since the child knows the mother tongue or home language already, why learn it further? What the child has when she comes to an early childhood education system or to a primary school is social skill in using language. The skill to engage in basic interpersonal communication, but that is not enough. There is a second level of language proficiency which primarily develops through formal schooling and literacy experience. That is, using language for thinking, planning, problem solving, for thinking about language, for engaging in cognitive and academic activities. Cognitive, academic, language proficiency for short. A child's language, therefore, must develop and move from the basic interpersonal communication skills to cognitive academic language proficiency. For using the language for higher mental functions. Schools should be able to facilitate development of child's language to a higher level of cognitive academic language proficiency. It is necessary to recognize that children benefit from knowing and developing their mother tongue. Our research with Cone children for over 20 years and research all over the world show this to be true. Children's home language is their resource, not a burden. It is well established in Indian studies and others throughout the world that children learn better in their mother tongue when socioeconomic status and quality of schooling differences are controlled. Children in mother tongue medium perform much better. And the myth of the English medium superiority has been analyzed, exposed in several of our studies and those of others in India as well as throughout the world. Yeah. International experts agree on the benefits of schools using children's home language. Children learn better in their mother tongue. It is their most complete resource at the point of entry into schooling or into early childhood education programs. Mother tongue regulates child's thought, and therefore there is wisdom in moving from known to the unknown. But we are not talking about mother tongue or home language alone. All children need to become multilingual, since multilingual competence adds to cognitive resource or to cognitive capital, the term that was used this morning. So what is needed is multilingual education, education in multiple languages used as language of teaching learning. Multilingual education needs to be developed on a strong foundation of mother tongue, so that the mother tongue, second or third and other languages add on to each other rather than being mutually subtractive or competitive. What is now offered to most of our children is a subtractive form of submersion education in a language that is not theirs. What is defensible and ideal is an additive form in which children's mother tongue is developed to higher levels through schooling, and then it is used as a basis for or to strengthen learning of first, second, third and other languages in a mutually supportive manner. This is the broad framework. Mother tongue needs to be used for as medium of instruction for at least 5 to 8 years, during which time other languages can be introduced. Gradually, mother tongue, second, third languages, etc., can be used for teaching learning, leading to high levels of multilingual proficiency. I talked about the basic principles rather than the demonstration of it, because I believe that very often, unless we understand the underlying principles, the practice and practice effects do not sink in. So, what we have is a broad framework of multilingual education, and this model of multilingual education has been tried all over the world and also in India, in Odisha in particular, where we have been working. We have, along with the government of Odisha, we took a multilingual education plus program with funding from Bernard Van Leer Foundation, myself and my colleague Minati Panda at JNU. We took schools in two tribal languages, Saura and Kui, and worked in the schools for nearly 7 years, 6.5 years, to promote mother tongue based education in the system. And these are some of the some of the slides which I will quickly run through to show that the things had really changed as a result of bringing in children's language to their classroom. These are primary grade children. Now, this program, both multilingual education program in Odisha as well as MLE plus program, have been evaluated by NCERT and other bodies, several evaluations which have shown them to be successful. But for me, the statistical success is not what matters. What matters for me is this child, for example, Panchu, whom we convinced to come to school, and the child came to school. On the in grade 2, Panchu, walking about 4 kilometers in the forest to come to school, was one day dragged by a hyena and was badly injured and had to be hospitalized. We didn't expect Panchu to come back to school, because normally our experience with tribal children is with slightest pretext they tend to remain out of school. Panchu surprised everybody by coming back to school, because even when he was still recovering, and that's the photograph of Panchu when the day he came back to school. And for me, what matters is that Panchu liked to come back to school because the school used a language which was his language. That's the success story. Thank you very much.
Smriti, your...
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here to talk about malnutrition and learning. So let's just understand the landscape a bit. So what I've done is I've put learning crisis on one side, and it's increasingly becoming clear, and in fact after the 2015 post 2015 SDGs, it is being talked about as a learning crisis even more, wherein the question is, children are going to school, but are they learning? So if I try to put it in a simple equation saying that sometimes schooling is not always the indicator of learning, and in various circumstances it does not automatically say that children are learning as well. On the other side of the slide is the malnutrition crisis. Now, globally, there are millions of children who are short in height as much as they should be for their age. They weigh less as much as they should for their weight. And they are short for height as per their weight as well. So these are the indicators of malnutrition. You might think somebody who's not very proud and does not come